Hey everyone, this is ScrapComputer here. This guide's going to cover and explain the most effective AD carries or marksmen in the new tank meta. If you just want the list of these carries, check the description and use the timestamps to navigate to it, if you don't want the conceptual reasons behind the list. For those that do, first and foremost, I'm going to cover why caster carries are now less effective. Understanding why is actually more important than me simply throwing a list at you. Let's get into it. With the rise of tanks, we've had the fall of caster carries. Caster carries, all of which I've listed below, all of the ones I consider to be heavily caster based, are AD carries that rely on the use of spells to deal a majority of their damage in quick succession. A prime example is Corki. He Valkyries in, he uses his Q, his E, his ultimate, and a couple of auto attacks. Most of his damage is sourced from his successive use of spells and of course, to a lesser degree, auto attacks. So overall he is considered, for the most part, a caster AD carry, as he relies on his spells. Now, why are caster carries now simply less effective in the tank meta? Let's look at some data on Champion GG, the website, to back up my thoughts on admittedly the big caster based champions, some quick data, and then into the actual reasons. Here is Graves' win rate per patch. As you can see, from the arrival of the tank meta, it's went down. His win rate has went down. It could be an exception. How about Corki's win rate? Same thing, it's went down. Quinn, caster based, same thing. One more piece of data. Let's look at Corki's win rate as the game progresses. Late game, he simply can't carry with his damage. If you check any caster carry late game, their chances of winning plummet. This alone shows that caster carries simply don't have enough bang for their buck late game. If it even gets to mid game in some cases, the tanks become too powerful for them to deal with. You just can't transcend onto the mid or late game and kill a tank. Caster carries are just horrible versus tanks. But let's get into the actual reasons of why they're less effective. Number 1, caster carries can't burst tanks. There will be exceptions, of course. If your Graves is 10-0, sure, you can kill and burst and blow everyone up, but for the most part in a normal game, burst damage is ineffective versus massive tanks. Versus a Nautilus, for example, a Graves will jump in, do his entire burst and merely tickle the Nautilus's HP. In the previous season, we had assassins and burst AP junglers. Some teams didn't even have a tank. So let's use Vi for example. In the previous season, she would 100% build full damage. She would dive the backline and immediately try and lock and kill someone. She built, normally, mass AD and only one single defensive item for the most part. And the same with Jarvan, a lot of them were going AD orientated. So start game, the Graves with a single bit of burst could actually kill Vi. He could do it, no problem. ADs can get wrecked. Most junglers rush damage as their first item and only got a single defensive item. This isn't enough versus a burster champion. Carry junglers ruled, but now with this season and the evolution of the tank meta, carry junglers just don't exist anymore, and now there's tank junglers. Tank junglers can't be bursted, carry junglers can. The enemy team used to, in the previous season, have no tank in a lot of games. Hence a caster carry had the ability to burst them down. With the new meta, they have the inability to. A single tank in the enemy team was there last season. In this season, there's about 3 or 4. In some cases, you've got a 5-man tank team. In this new meta, we have multiple, sometimes full tank teams, which can't be bursted. You cannot burst a tank, you need sustained damage, making caster carries, simply put, less effective as they can't burst and execute their target. Number 2, they don't have enough sustained damage. From the previous point, to kill a massive tank, you simply can't burst them. It's not enough. You need mass sustained damage. This is the counter to the tank meta. Champions who focus on mass damage per second or DPS builds will completely destroy their counterparts in effectiveness. Champions like Kog'Maw do massive sustained damage with that HP shred auto attack, and basically put his auto attacks. He focuses on auto attacking over a large period of time to accumulate mass damage. These auto attacks over time will do far greater damage than a Graves single burst. Most casters don't build nearly enough attack speed to do proper sustained auto attack damage. They will build a single attack speed item, and remember, they don't auto attack much anyway. They're going to be spending all of their time opening and casting upon spells, not auto attacking. So finally, an example, a Corki will jump in and do far more damage with his mass AD and Sheen proc normally. But over time, his less attack speed and generally his less auto attacks will do less time over the long run after his original burst. whereas a Jinx, for example, who starts auto-attacking, will originally do quite a tiny bit of damage, not much, but over time it will accumulate over the burst damage and do more sustained DPS with their auto-attacks. So auto-attack carries generally do more damage over time, as bursters burst and kill their target immediately. If they can't burst their target down, they're dead. Number 3, lastly, they can't properly utilize Blade of the Ruined King, or Bork for short. This is the biggest reason why caster carries are simply put not as effective in a tank meta. With a tank meta, Bork is the most effective item an AD carry can possibly hope to obtain. The caster carries are just simply put less effective with it. Caster carries want mass AD to do burst damage and just to scale into their abilities. Infinity Edge, Bloodthirster, not attack speed and a little bit of AD like with Bork. A Corki, a Graves, a Sivir, a Draven, a Varus, they can all get Bork and do okay with it, I'm not saying that, but their kits just won't be as effective. Their spells will do less damage, and you have to remember, they're going to be wanting to use spells, basically put. When they're using spells, they're not auto-attacking with Blade, making it a wasted item. They want to do burst damage. Their kit is designed around burst damage and AD scalings. If you get Bork on these champions, it's less effective. I'm not saying it can't work, but it's less effective. They will do less burst damage and work off sustained auto attack damage. It can work. But why would you do that? In this case, why not just pick a true auto attack carry to make it more effective? Why people are trying to force the casters into an auto attack role, which is ineffective. These are the reasons why caster carries have had a fall in play, whether you know it or not. Because they truly are less effective. Sustained damage is the new meta. This is proven below. On the left hand side we have Vayne's late game percentage win potential as the game progresses. So, on the right we have Sivir's win rate as the game progresses. As you can see, Sivir's plummets, whereas Vayne's rises. Either way, Sivir, just simply put, has not got enough burst damage with her cast to do enough damage and actually win, whereas Vayne on the other hand has got enough damage and can carry. Late game casters simply put don't do enough damage, and even mid game with enough tanks. This I believe perfectly shows the difference between caster and auto attack carries. On to the next section. Exceptions. Now there are 2 caster carries exceptions I'll mention below. Number 1, Ezreal. He is an exception in every way, shape and form. His Q is an on-hit marker, so he can apply Blade of the Ruined King from a mile off with a very low cooldown. His passive, if used correctly, provides him with basically a constant 50% attack speed buff. With this and a low cooldown Q, Ezreal can easily proc a Bork multiple times throughout a fight and properly put just be an auto attack carry, if he's played well. His kit actually synergizes extremely well with Bork, adding in burst potential as well. In addition and lastly, he is safe versus tank meta, because obviously in a tank meta there's a lot of CC. He's very safe, so this isn't really an issue. He's actually one of the best champions in this new meta. And I'm not being biased because I'm an Ezreal main. Number 2, Lucian. His passive can proc off Bork multiple times in quick succession. This means his caster style is not heavily punished. You can do, go in with a dash, double shot, Q, double shot, W, double shot. That's a total of 6 Bork procs in around 2 to 3 seconds. You can even burst a tank with that. This is not on par with an auto attack carry, I do want to emphasize this. He will scale a little off compared to a true auto attack carry who uses Bork better, but in regards to sustained damage, but he isn't punished as badly as the other casters, and his kit does decently well with Bork, adding in even more burst potential and kite potential. And that's it for the section of why caster carries are bad in the new meta and the exceptions, of course. See this list below? Remember it and avoid these carries. They can still work. I don't want anyone to misconstrue what I'm saying. They are good champions. I'm not saying they can't win. But versus this conceptual meta, you really shouldn't be doing it versus tanks. They are less effective and you're putting yourself at a handicap for no reason at all. They just don't work as well, simply put. You want to give yourself the best way to win, and this is it, picking the right champion. Now let's get on to the best carries versus the tank meta. Shown below are the most effective carries versus this new meta. I'll explain each of them very quickly and explain why they're effective. Ezreal, he's already been explained. Jinx. She has massive attack speed buff that can utilize Bork very effectively. From here, she's the only carry with a very high percentage HP ultimate, which for obvious reasons is amazing versus a tank meta. Overall, even with the normal build, she's very auto attack reliant. In other words, she deals a lot of sustained damage. And secondly, she's got decent caster reliancy as well, but overall it's majorly put to auto attacks. Her auto attacks will do more than enough damage to rip tanks apart. Kalista. She can kite tanks for days. Bork and Runan's Hurricane combo proccing off mass Bork stacks is actually a standard build for her and is perfect versus the tank meta. Lastly, her W also does percentage HP damage, and as Runan's also applies her W, it makes it disgusting, which further increases her powerful nature versus tanks. She's very effective. Tristana. Starting mid game she is cast orientated, but with her auto attacks and safety late game, she more than makes up for this. Get Blade of the Rune King and see how 110% attack speed buff mid game fits, or late game fits, versus the tank meta. Versus tanks, max your Q first, and not your abilities, and get Bork so you're on hit. This, if you do this, it actually makes Tristana pretty effective versus this meta. Twitch. Do you smell that? No, it's not Twitch. It's not an obvious pun. It's the smell of success. Here is Twitch's win rate as seen on the left. It went up big time and is still rising. We have Champion, who gets Bork pretty much all the time, has a massive attack speed buff, and an ultimate that can hit multiple targets at massive range and theoretically apply 5 Bork stacks per auto attack. Twitch is actually very effective in a tank meta with enough protection. Now I've left the best for last and the most effective carries by far in this meta. Kog'Maw. Below you're going to see the tank meta coming. Oh, and Kog'Maw's win rate rocketing. This is a hard statistical data that proves that playing this champion is better. It has a reason, it has logic behind it. Kog'Maw has percentage HP damage per auto attack, an attack speed buff, and normally has Bork as his core item. This makes him perfect versus a tank meta. He does percentage HP damage. When they get more health, they're just giving him food for damage really. Very simple matchup, and he is very effective. He's one of the best carries by far. Vayne. Exactly the same as Vayne. Seen below, her win rate is skyrocketing because she does percentage HP true damage, which is a direct counter to tanks. I would even say Vayne's a little bit more effective. Her and Kog'Maw are the two most effective AD carries in the entire game right now versus the tank meta. And that's it for all of the effective carries. And notice that we are in a tank meta. If the enemy team are not building tanks though, it's not too common anymore. They generally build just tanks, but if they're not, you can ignore this rule. I'm not saying the other carries can't be played. They do have their spot, or in 5-man teams of course. If you can get protection for other champions, it's fine. I just want to say versus a general team right now in a tank meta, these are the most effective carries, 100%, no doubt about it. And these are the most effective carries to help you get that win rate up, although they aren't free wins. If you aren't good on Ezreal, you're not going to win. If you're not good on Kalista, you're not going to win. But if you're building right and you're playing right, these champions will give you a statistical advantage to win. But they're not free wins. And that's it for my thoughts on this new tank meta and how effectively to defeat it from an AD carry's point of view. I hope it helps, guys. If you like it, dislike it, dislike it. If you like me, subscribe, or if the video isn't up to scratch, unsub. I'm totally fair. And thank you so much for continuing to watch the videos, guys. I really appreciate it. You don't know how much it means to me. Thank you, and enjoy your day, and best of luck in the Rift.